For a moment, close your eyes and go back in time. The late 1980s. The early 1990s. Every blockbuster poster. Every comedy classic. Rick Moranis wasn't just famous, he was everywhere. Then, without warning, he vanished. No scandals. No arrests. No public meltdown. No tragic overdose. Just silence. Hollywood didn't cancel him. Audiences didn't abandon him. He didn't fail. Instead, he made a choice so shocking, so deeply human, that it quietly broke every rule of fame, and exposed a truth most celebrities are too afraid to live by. For decades, fans asked the same question. What really happened to Rick Moranis? The answer isn't glamorous. It isn't dramatic in the way tabloids love. But once you hear it, you'll never look at Hollywood or success the same way again. Because at the exact moment when Rick Moranis had everything, he walked away. And the reason why will stay with you until the very last frame of this video. Before he disappeared, before the questions, before the silence, Rick Moranis was something rare in Hollywood, a star people felt safe with. He didn't look like a movie star in the traditional sense. He wasn't intimidating, flashy, or impossibly perfect. He looked like someone you might sit next to on a bus, someone who would apologize if you bumped into him. And that was exactly why audiences loved him. In an era dominated by larger-than-life action heroes and glamorous leading men, Rick Moranis stood out by being unapologetically ordinary. He played characters who were nervous, kind, slightly awkward, and deeply human. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't selling fantasy, he was reflecting reality, our reality. Parents trusted him. Kids laughed at him. Adults saw themselves in him. There was no edge to fear, no scandal to explain away. When Rick Moranis appeared on screen, the audience relaxed. You knew you were in good hands. His comedy didn't punch down. It didn't humiliate. It came from confusion, from sincerity, from trying to do the right thing and somehow making a mess along the way. Hollywood rarely produces stars like that. And when it does, it usually exploits them until there's nothing left. But Rick Moranis never behaved like someone who needed fame to survive. He wasn't chasing applause. He wasn't feeding an ego. He was simply working, creating, showing up. And that made his eventual disappearance even more unsettling. Because when someone addicted to attention vanishes, people understand it. When someone who never seemed to want attention at all vanishes, it leaves behind a different kind of mystery, one that feels personal. The truth is, Rick Moranis didn't just play the nice guy. He was the nice guy. And in Hollywood, that alone makes you an anomaly. Long before movie studios fought over his availability, Rick Moranis was just a kid growing up in Toronto, Canada, far removed from the chaos and excess of Hollywood. There were no red carpets in his childhood. No industry parents. No agents whispering promises of stardom. His path into entertainment wasn't planned, it was accidental, gradual, and deeply rooted in observation. As a young man, Moranis gravitated toward radio. It was a perfect fit. Radio didn't care how you looked. It cared how you sounded, how you thought, how quickly you could respond. It rewarded wit, timing, and intelligence, qualities Moranis had in abundance. He developed a sharp ear for voices, rhythms, and human absurdities. He listened more than he spoke, absorbing the world around him and quietly turning it into comedy. That habit, watching people closely, would later define his on-screen presence. His characters didn't feel written, they felt noticed. Eventually, his talents carried him into television, where comedy was rawer, riskier, and less polished than film. This was where Moranis truly began to sharpen his voice. He wasn't loud. He wasn't aggressive. But he was precise. His humor didn't demand attention, it earned it. Unlike many performers chasing fame, Moranis never behaved like he was climbing a ladder. He approached comedy like a craft, not a shortcut to celebrity. He experimented. He failed quietly. He improved steadily. And most importantly, he stayed grounded. Toronto wasn't Hollywood. It didn't worship stars. It valued work. That environment shaped him. It taught him that comedy was something you did, not something you used to become famous. And that belief would later place him on a collision course with an industry that measured success very differently. Everything changed when Rick Moranis joined Second City Television, better known as SCTV. The show wasn't just a stepping stone, it was a proving ground. It demanded creativity at a brutal pace. New characters, new sketches, new ideas. Over and over again. There was no time to coast, no room to hide behind gimmicks. This is where Moranis flourished. On SCTV, he revealed a genius for character work. He could transform himself completely, not through flashy costumes, but through subtle shifts in voice, posture, and intent. His characters felt fully formed, as if they had lived entire lives off-screen. They weren't caricatures. They were strange, believable people trapped in absurd situations. One of his greatest strengths was restraint. While others went big, Moranis went true. He trusted silence. He trusted awkward pauses. He trusted the audience to lean in rather than be shouted at. That confidence separated him from his peers. Behind the scenes, he was known as reliable, professional, and ego-free, three traits that are shockingly rare in an industry fueled by ambition. He didn't demand attention. He didn't fight for the spotlight. And yet, it kept finding him anyway. SCTV became a cult phenomenon, and Moranis emerged as one of its brightest stars. Hollywood noticed, not because he chased it, but because he was impossible to ignore. Offers began to arrive. Big ones. Life-changing ones. To most performers, this would have felt like the beginning of the dream. To Rick Moranis, it was simply the next job. And no one, absolutely no one, could have predicted how far he would rise, or how willingly he would later walk away. By the time Hollywood's attention turned toward Rick Moranis, it wasn't because of hype, scandals, or aggressive self-promotion. It was because casting directors, producers, and executives kept hearing the same thing from different corners of the industry. This guy is different. Not louder. Not flashier. Just better. Hollywood in the early 1980s was a place of excess. Big personalities dominated rooms. Actors sold not just performances but images. Macho, glamorous, untouchable. Rick Moranis didn't fit that mold at all. He walked into meetings without entourage, without swagger, without any visible hunger for stardom. And yet, once he spoke, people listened. What made Moranis so valuable was something studios couldn't manufacture: authenticity. He didn't act relatable, he simply was. Executives realized that audiences trusted him almost instinctively. He felt safe, intelligent, and emotionally grounded. In a time when comedies often relied on cruelty or exaggeration, Moranis offered warmth without being dull and humor without being mean. Offers began arriving, first modest, then serious. Supporting roles turned into co-starring opportunities. Each project confirmed the same thing: he elevated everything he touched. Scenes felt sharper. Dialogue landed harder. Even chaos felt controlled when he was present. Still, Moranis approached Hollywood like a visitor, not a conqueror. He didn't uproot his values. He didn't chase celebrity culture. He showed up, did the work, and went home. Fame followed him anyway, like a shadow he never invited. That quiet resistance, his refusal to be reshaped, made him even more intriguing to filmmakers. He was the anti-Hollywood Hollywood star. And that contradiction was about to place him in a film that would change his life forever. When Ghostbusters came together, it wasn't designed to create legends. It was a risky comedy built on an unusual premise, driven by sharp writing and ensemble chemistry. Rick Moranis wasn't the centerpiece, he was the wild card. Cast as the painfully awkward neighbor, he could have been forgettable. Instead, he became unforgettable. Moranis didn't play the role for laughs alone. He played it with commitment, sincerity, and a strange emotional honesty. His character wasn't just funny, he was lonely, insecure, and painfully human. That depth transformed a side character into a cultural icon. Audiences didn't just laugh at him, they remembered him. His lines became quotable. His presence lingered long after the credits rolled. Without stealing the spotlight, he somehow owned it. And suddenly, Rick Moranis was everywhere. The success of Ghostbusters exploded beyond expectations. Merchandise. Sequels. Global recognition. Overnight, Moranis became part of cinematic history. His face was familiar in homes he would never visit, to people he would never meet. For most actors, this would have been intoxicating. The beginning of relentless self-promotion. The gateway to ego, indulgence, and excess. But Moranis reacted differently. He didn't change. He didn't inflate. He didn't rebrand himself as a star. He simply accepted the work that felt right and declined what didn't. Hollywood saw gold. Rick Moranis saw responsibility, to the story, to the audience, and quietly, to his own life. That quiet tension between fame and values would soon grow stronger. If Ghostbusters made Rick Moranis famous, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids made him beloved across generations. This wasn't just a hit movie, it was a family ritual. Parents trusted it. Children adored it. And at the center was Moranis, playing a father who was brilliant, distracted, flawed, and deeply loving. He wasn't a superhero. He wasn't invincible. He was overwhelmed. And that's exactly why he worked. In an industry obsessed with perfection, Moranis portrayed failure without shame. His character made mistakes, big ones, but never lost his humanity. Kids didn't just laugh at him, they saw him trying. Parents didn't just relate, they recognized themselves. The film's success turned Moranis into the ultimate safe star. Studios realized that if his name was attached, families would show up. And they did. Again and again. With that success came something most actors dream of: leverage. He could pick projects, negotiate terms, shape roles. He had reached a level of stability and influence that promised decades of prosperity. But beneath the surface, something quieter was happening. Moranis was becoming known not just for his performances, but for his choices. He avoided Hollywood parties. He avoided press theatrics. He avoided excess. Fame seemed to orbit him, but never quite touch him. While others expanded their brands, he protected his boundaries. And though no one could see it yet, the seeds of his eventual disappearance were already planted. Not in failure, not in rejection, but in a growing awareness that success comes with a cost. A cost Rick Moranis was already questioning. By the early 1990s, Rick Moranis had become something Hollywood rarely knows how to handle: a consistent box office success who didn't behave like a star. Film after film performed well. Studios trusted him. Audiences trusted him even more. His presence didn't just guarantee laughs, it guaranteed comfort, repeat viewings, and long-term cultural value. Yet behind the numbers and headlines, Moranis remained strangely untouched by the machinery of fame. He didn't leverage success for power plays. He didn't demand creative control through intimidation. He didn't cultivate mystique or controversy to stay relevant. In an industry that rewards noise, he chose quiet. This baffled executives. They expected him to push harder, expand faster, dominate the decade. Instead, Moranis treated success like a job well done, not a ladder to climb endlessly. He turned down roles that felt hollow. He questioned scripts that leaned too heavily on cruelty or humiliation. He was protective of the audience, especially children, refusing to cheapen humor for easy laughs. That restraint only strengthened his reputation among those who worked with him. Directors spoke of his discipline. Co-stars admired his lack of ego. Crews trusted him. He showed up prepared, delivered exactly what was needed, and never made the work about himself. But Hollywood thrives on hunger. It feeds on ambition that never sleeps. And Moranis' calm self-sufficiency made him an outlier. He wasn't trying to win Hollywood, he was simply passing through it. Unnoticed by the public, a quiet tension was forming. The industry wanted more of Rick Moranis, while Rick Moranis was beginning to want less. Hollywood is not just about talent, it's about participation. Red carpets, interviews, award campaigns, late-night appearances, publicity tours, these are the rituals of visibility. Rick Moranis fulfilled them when required, but never embraced them. He didn't enjoy them. He didn't chase them. And crucially, he didn't need them to validate himself. This refusal wasn't rebellion. It was principle. Moranis understood something many stars learned too late: fame is not neutral. It demands access to your time, your privacy, your identity. And once you give it too much, it takes more. He watched peers burn out, spiral, or disappear under the weight of expectation. He took notes quietly. While others curated personas, Moranis protected his real life. He kept his circle small. He avoided excess. He stayed grounded in routine. To Hollywood publicists, this made him difficult to sell. To Moranis, it made him sane. There were subtle consequences. Roles that required relentless promotion passed him by. Franchises wanted bigger personalities. Studios preferred stars who lived for exposure. Moranis didn't complain. He adapted, or stepped aside. Importantly, this wasn't retreat. He was still working. Still respected. Still successful. But he was setting boundaries in an industry that punishes them. And slowly, almost invisibly, those boundaries began shaping his future more than any contract ever could. From the outside, Rick Moranis' career looked unstoppable. He had credibility, popularity, and financial security. He was beloved by families, admired by peers, and trusted by studios. This was the point where legends usually double down, where careers stretch into dominance, awards, and long-term superstardom. Everyone assumed that was next. But beneath the surface, Moranis was standing at a crossroads few people recognized. Success had given him clarity, not hunger. Fame had revealed its limits. And life, quietly, mercilessly, was preparing a challenge no box office number could shield him from. The roles kept coming. Bigger checks. Longer commitments. Greater visibility. Each offer demanded more time, more absence, more sacrifice. And Moranis began asking questions most actors avoid. What am I trading for this? Who pays the price? These were not theoretical questions. They were deeply personal ones. While audiences saw a man at the height of his powers, Moranis was becoming acutely aware that life was fragile, finite, and unwilling to wait for careers to conclude. Something precious was slipping into focus. Something far more important than momentum. And then, suddenly, the silence began. No announcement. No dramatic exit. No final curtain call. Just a gradual, deliberate withdrawal that left Hollywood confused, and fans wondering what they had missed. Because Rick Moranis didn't fall from the peak. He stepped away from it. The disappearance didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic headline, no farewell interview, no public declaration of retirement. Instead, Rick Moranis simply began to fade. 1 year he was there, familiar, dependable, everywhere. The next, his name stopped appearing on call sheets. Projects moved forward without him. Hollywood, an industry obsessed with constant motion, noticed the stillness immediately. At first, people assumed it was temporary. A break. A negotiation tactic. A scheduling conflict. After all, stars step away all the time, usually to return louder, bigger, and more expensive. Studios expected the same here. Agents waited. Producers checked in. Scripts were sent. But the silence continued. Months passed. Then years. Fans began asking questions. Entertainment magazines speculated. Online forums filled the gap with theories. Some claimed he had burned out. Others suggested he had been pushed aside by a changing industry. A few even whispered that Hollywood had simply moved on. None of it quite made sense. This wasn't an actor whose career had cooled. This was someone who had stepped away while still wanted. While still bankable. While still loved. That's what made the silence unsettling. It felt intentional, but unexplained. Behind the scenes, insiders were confused too. Hollywood is used to desperation. It understands ambition. But it doesn't know how to process contentment, or worse, someone who chooses absence over applause. The truth was far more personal than anyone imagined. And far heavier than gossip could carry. In the absence of truth, rumor becomes entertainment. As Rick Moranis remained out of sight, speculation hardened into mythology. Some believed he had been quietly blacklisted for refusing roles. Others claimed he had lost relevance in a younger, flashier industry. A few even suggested that personal eccentricities had made him difficult, despite decades of evidence to the contrary. None of it held up. Colleagues consistently described him as professional, kind, and reliable. Directors praised his preparation. Co-stars respected his humility. There was no scandal buried beneath the silence, no ugly secret waiting to be exposed. But Hollywood has a problem with people who leave on their own terms. If an actor fails, the story is simple. If an actor is fired, it's understandable. But if an actor chooses to walk away, the industry feels rejected, and rejection breeds narrative. So the myths multiplied. What few people understood was that Moranis wasn't avoiding Hollywood out of bitterness or fear. He wasn't hiding. He was living, quietly, deliberately, and with a clarity that fame rarely allows. The public, however, wasn't ready for that explanation. It was too ordinary. Too human. Too uncomfortable. And then, slowly, pieces of the real story began to surface. Long before the silence became noticeable to the world, Rick Moranis' life had already been permanently altered. Away from cameras and premieres, he was facing something no career could prepare him for: devastating personal loss. His wife, Anne Belsky, the woman who grounded him, supported him, and shared a life far removed from Hollywood noise, fell gravely ill. Cancer entered their world quietly, and then took over everything. Treatments. Appointments. Waiting rooms. Hope followed by fear, again and again. In 1991, she passed away. Suddenly, Moranis wasn't a movie star. He was a widower. And more importantly, he was a single father to 2 young children who needed him in ways no studio ever could. This was the truth hidden behind the silence. At the very moment when Hollywood wanted more films, more time, more presence, life demanded everything he had. And Moranis didn't hesitate. There was no public struggle, no press release asking for privacy. He made a decision quietly, the same way he had lived his career. He chose his children. Acting didn't disappear from his life, but it was demoted, placed firmly behind parenthood. He turned down roles not because he couldn't act, but because he couldn't leave. Long shoots, promotional tours, extended absences. They all carried a cost his children would pay. And that price was unacceptable to him. So Rick Moranis stepped away, not in defeat, not in shame, but in love. A choice that stunned Hollywood. A choice that rewrote the definition of success. And a choice that would echo far longer than any blockbuster ever could. When the truth quietly surfaced, that Rick Moranis had stepped away to raise his children after losing his wife, Hollywood didn't know how to respond. Not because the reason wasn't understandable, but because the decision itself violated an unspoken rule of the industry: you don't stop when you're still winning. In Hollywood, tragedy is often managed, outsourced, or postponed. Careers are protected at all costs. Children grow up with nannies. Families adapt to schedules, not the other way around. Moranis did the opposite. He adapted his career to his family, and that reversal made his choice almost incomprehensible to an industry built on sacrifice. Executives tried to accommodate him. Shorter shoots, flexible schedules, voice work, cameos. Some of it he accepted. Most of it he declined. Even scaled-down commitments demanded time and emotional bandwidth he wasn't willing to divert. His children didn't need a famous father. They needed a present one. This wasn't a dramatic stand. There were no speeches about values. No condemnation of Hollywood culture. Moranis didn't criticize anyone else's choices. He simply made his own, and lived with it fully. Behind closed doors, reactions varied. Some executives were frustrated. Some colleagues were stunned. But many, quietly, were deeply respectful. They saw something rare, a man with the power to have everything, choosing only what mattered. And slowly, as years passed, Hollywood stopped waiting for him to come back. Not because the door was closed, but because Moranis wasn't walking through it. What makes Rick Moranis' story extraordinary isn't just that he left, it's when he left. There was no decline forcing him out. No fading relevance. No financial desperation. He walked away during a moment most actors would kill to extend indefinitely. The industry kept moving. New stars rose. New franchises dominated. But Moranis didn't chase relevance. He didn't pivot into reinvention. He didn't cling to nostalgia. He allowed the spotlight to move on without resentment. This was not retirement in the traditional sense. It was a reordering of priorities. Acting became optional. Fatherhood became non-negotiable. And that choice carried consequences. Money left on the table. Roles never played. Legacy expanded in one direction while shrinking in another. Moranis understood that. He accepted it. Peacefully. Years turned into decades. His absence became a cultural question mark. Fans who grew up watching him introduced his films to their children. A new generation asked the same question: where did he go? The answer remained unchanged. He went where he was needed most. Away from premieres and press tours, Rick Moranis built a life intentionally small and fiercely protected. He lived privately. He raised his children without cameras following milestones or strangers projecting expectations. School events mattered more than box office returns. Bedtime conversations mattered more than reviews. He didn't disappear from creativity entirely. He did voice work. He explored music. He chose projects that respected his boundaries. But fame was no longer the center of gravity in his life, and he never tried to replace it with something louder. What's remarkable is not that he survived without Hollywood, but that he thrived. By all accounts, he lived well. Thoughtfully. Fully. Without bitterness. In a culture that equates visibility with worth, Moranis proved something radical: a life can be meaningful without being watched. And that may be the most shocking truth of all. Hollywood is built to forget. New faces replace old ones with ruthless efficiency, and yesterday's stars become trivia answers almost overnight. But Rick Moranis never fit that pattern. Even as the industry moved on, audiences didn't. His films never disappeared. They lived on through reruns, home video, streaming platforms, and family movie nights. Parents who had grown up laughing at him now watched the same scenes with their children, and something strange happened. His work didn't feel dated. It felt timeless. Fans continued to ask about him, not with mockery or gossip, but with genuine concern and affection. Is he okay? Why did he leave? Will he ever come back? These weren't the questions asked about fallen stars. They were questions asked about someone missed. Occasionally, his name would resurface in interviews with other actors. The responses were always warm. always respectful. No one spoke of him with bitterness or dismissal. Instead, they spoke of him as someone who had chosen a different path, and had done so courageously. In a culture obsessed with constant relevance, Moranis' absence made his presence more meaningful. He wasn't overexposed. He wasn't diluted. His legacy remained intact, untouched by desperation or decline. Hollywood moved on. But the audience kept the light on. Inside the industry, Rick Moranis' story slowly transformed from confusion to admiration. As time passed, the shock of his departure faded, and what remained was respect. Actors who had once chased every opportunity began to see his choice differently. Directors spoke about him as an example of discipline. Writers described him as someone who valued substance over scale. He became a quiet reference point in conversations about balance, about what success actually costs. No one openly criticized his decision. In fact, many admitted privately that they wished they had made similar choices earlier in their lives. The difference was that Moranis had the clarity to act on it when it mattered most. Hollywood is full of cautionary tales. Rick Moranis became something else entirely, a counterexample. Proof that walking away doesn't always mean losing. Proof that fame doesn't define worth. And slowly, subtly, the narrative changed. He wasn't the actor who disappeared. He was the actor who chose. Over time, the full story became widely known. Interviews clarified his reasons. Articles corrected old rumors. Fans finally understood what had happened, and the reaction was not disappointment, but awe. In an industry filled with scandal, Moranis' absence was rooted in love. In a culture driven by ambition, his withdrawal was driven by responsibility. That revelation hit harder than any tabloid headline ever could. People didn't feel betrayed by his absence. They felt inspired by it. Because his story forced an uncomfortable reflection: if given the same choice, fame or family, what would we choose? And would we have the courage to live with it? Rick Moranis did. And in doing so, he transformed his disappearance into something far more powerful than a comeback. He turned it into a statement. In Hollywood, legacy is usually measured in trophies, box office totals, and how long a name stays at the top of the billing sheet. By those standards, Rick Moranis already had more than enough to secure his place in film history. But his true legacy was never about numbers, it was about example. He became a hero not because he saved the world on screen, but because he chose to show up where it mattered most off screen. At a time when success demanded constant presence, he proved that absence, when chosen for the right reasons, could be just as powerful. Moranis' characters were often underestimated: the awkward neighbor, the distracted inventor, the mild-mannered everyman. In hindsight, those roles feel almost prophetic. He embodied decency, vulnerability, and quiet strength long before those qualities were celebrated. His real-life choices mirrored the same values his characters lived by. For many fans, learning the truth didn't diminish his career, it elevated it. His films became more meaningful. His performances carried added weight. Knowing the man behind the roles made the laughter warmer and the nostalgia deeper. Rick Moranis didn't fade away. He simply stopped asking the world to watch him. And that, in a culture addicted to attention, is its own kind of courage. When history looks back on Rick Moranis, it won't see a cautionary tale or a mystery unsolved. It will see something far rarer: a man who reached the summit, looked around, and decided that staying wasn't worth what it would cost. He didn't disappear because Hollywood rejected him. He didn't vanish because he failed. He left because he succeeded, and understood what that success was worth. In doing so, Moranis redefined what it means to win. Success in his story isn't measured by longevity in the spotlight, but by integrity in moments that no one else sees. It's measured by presence, by sacrifice, by choosing love over applause. Years from now, when his films are still being discovered by new generations, the question may no longer be, where did Rick Moranis go? It may become, would I have done the same? Because sometimes, the most shocking story in Hollywood isn't about scandal or downfall. It's about a man who had everything, and chose what mattered most.